everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on chapters 246 to 246, 27, 28, of Heaven Official's Blessing! We're in the end game now. We are officially in the extras, which I'm really excited about. So, basically, I think, as far as I know, I remember when I was mapping out my chapters, I had everything mapped out, and then the moment I started reading ahead, it was a couple weeks ago, I was like, oh, I need to probably maybe reconfigure the chapters since I read ahead and maybe altered some things. And then once we got to the extras, I saw a part 1, and I was like, okay, if we're in the extras, I want to read an extra together, right? I think during Modao Zushi, a mistake I made was that I watched, like, there were, like, the incense chapters, there are, like, some extras, but they're split into all different ones, and I watched some of them separate, and in hindsight, I kind of wish I'd watched them together, and I remember reading the audio dramas and doing the novel, and I'm like, I wish I'd watched or read those together. So I decided for this story, if I saw a part 1, I was like, okay, I need to read all of those parts together. So there is a part to this book. It is called The Strange Amnesiac Adventures of His Highness the Crown Prince. What that means, I don't know, but it said part 1, and so I looked ahead and I was like, okay, well, how many parts are there? And there's part 2, and there is a part 3, and then that's it. So that's what we're going to be looking at today, are the Amnesiac chapters, which I believe in the table of contents, I feel like I can kind of, if I'm really good about it, it goes up to chapters 249. So 246 to 249. So 4 chapters we're going to cover today in our book. I also asked Discord about the little extras that I got that came with this special edition, and if it was safe for me to look at them yet, or if some of the special edition goodies had to do with the extra chapters. And everyone on Discord was kind of indecisive. Everybody was like, I don't know. So we've only got a couple weeks left after this chapter set, so I think what I'll do is I'll just leave my extra goodies for when we reach the end of the novel. We'll just do that. That'll be good. So honestly, we have this week, next week, and the week after that, I believe, is going to be the final week of this volume. And then we've just got the extras with Reiki that they've been collaborating about the edits that MXTX has done, and we'll talk about those that week. And then I've got some, like, a couple extra things, something with Modao Zushi I want to do since it's the Chinese New Year coming up. So I've got stuff like that, but I was telling Discord, by March, we'll be ready to start Scum Villain. But I want to savor Heaven Official's Blessing for all that it's left. I want to savor these extra chapters, because usually the extra chapters, there's some good nuggets that happen within those. So I want to do that. I want to savor that and have fun with it. And yeah, and just kind of savor Heaven Official's Blessing for the time being. Now, the audio dramas, I do want to get through some in February and do maybe a reaction to some of them in February as they come. But then after February, it's going to be just like, they're going to be kind of spaced out, few and far between. I don't know if I'm ready to do a live stream for Heaven Official's Blessing yet. I always want to do a live stream when I'm done with, like, the live action and everything. So, but who knows when that's coming out. So we'll just put the live stream on, like, a to be announced. It may even be in the summer. I want to do, like, another summer live stream series like I did last year. And so that may be a thing that I do at that time. So we'll just have to see. But I'm really excited to read today. I'm not going to be reading online. It's going to all be from the book, because the online copy I had didn't have the extras. So we're going to be reading out of the book, which is exciting. We'll get to see pictures, hopefully, if we get any. And then I brought Whiteboard Coon back because y'all, I'm sure, missed him last week. I was like, oh, I didn't really need Whiteboard Coon last week. But going back through, I realized there are still some unanswered questions. Maybe these extras will answer those questions. I don't know. But Yin Yu, are they where they be? Are they, you know, are they a little spirit roaming around? Are they going to be a ghost? We don't know yet. Mainian Xing, are we going to see him again? Last time we saw him, he was at, you know, Jun Wu's burial memorial service. So are we going to get to see them again? That damn Banyu puppet question ain't answered. Don't bet I haven't forgot about that. It's not been answered yet, damn it. The fetus spirit origin, will we ever get answers? Maybe. We'll keep it up there. Heshon, is Beef Leaf going to ever make a comeback? We don't know. There was a little hint of it last set, but, you know. Chi-Rong, are they going to come back? I'm holding out hope. And will we ever find out anything about the Thundermaster? The ever elusive minor character that I guess I feel bad because every other elemental master, we got something. You know, even Shiwudu, who was there for a hot second, we got something on Shiwudu that was pretty substantive, but we have nothing on the Thunder Master. We have the Rain Master, we have the Water Master, we have the Wind Master, Fire Master. Well, was Junwoo the Fire Master as well? Who knows? And the Earth Master, at least we got a little bit on the Earth Master, knowing that they're at least a corpse. We got nothing on the Thunder Master except he bangs some drums. The Ringo Starr of the Elemental Masters is the Thunder Master, and I just want more info because I like Ringo. So, but that's where we're at there. And then I've got a couple comments before we start our reading for this week. Sarah Linda was pointing out how so many characters were tied to Shanla, to Yongin, and to Yushi. Yeah, I'd say like 90% of the characters, if you put Wooyoung in there, then that's 95% of the characters that are the main figures of the story are all tied to that. But interestingly enough, we don't know where the Shi brothers are from, where the Wind Master, Water Master are from. Don't know. Maybe we'll find that out in this novel. We'll wait and see. Pancake. I also liked Pancake pointing out that Heshan, when they were imitating the Reverend of Empty Words, told Xie Lian that Hua Cheng would literally die in front of him. And then he did. Like, how dare? Oh my God. I was like, Heshan, how dare you jinx Hua Cheng? Okay, of course now we know why Heshan jinxed Hua Cheng. It was to get out of his debt. He didn't want to keep paying for things anymore, right? I think SQQLBH asked, they're like, do you think that Heshan, because at one point, when Hua Cheng was kind of evaporated into the butterflies, at one point, Heshan was the only supreme left. Do you think that they wanted Hua Cheng to come back? And I was like, no. He was like, oh good, my debt's gone. Awesome, don't have to keep repaying that. And then the moment Hua Cheng comes back, he's like, and I'm back. Hua Cheng becomes like Alyssa Edwards, and he's like, I'm back again. And then Anime Annie, I really liked this. Several people pointed it out, but Anime Annie, I think, phrased it the most concise. They were like, Xie Lian, throughout that battle alongside Hua Cheng against Junwoo, used every skill set that they've used this entire story. They used their intelligence, they used their sharp wit, their agility, they used their busking skills to basically beat Junwoo. And I kind of love that it's Xie Lian's busking skills. Something that Junwoo kind of chided him for and was like kind of on him about it. And that's what he used to defeat him. It's like, yes, that's right. Boulder smashing skills indeed. Just love it, right? So yeah, we're getting to the end game, and I'm really, really excited. Because now it's just like, now we just get to see if MXTX is going to give us answers. Are they going to give us answers? Is that going to be a thing? What's that going to be like? So we get to see, but I'm excited. So we're going to, Romania Black, it's story time. We're going to open up to chapter 130. Was it here? Chapter 246, 135 in the book, right? Extra 2, The Strange Amnesiac Adventures of His Highness the Crown Prince. I kept Whiteboard Kun out here because I figured I've made a little note in between each part that maybe I'll stop at each part, and if we have any notes to write up on Whiteboard Kun or just kind of break each part down as we go. Because Amnesiac Adventures makes me think that Xie Lian is going to forget something, or are we covering, it used to be up here, so I looked to it, the 500 years when we didn't know what Xie Lian's been doing. Are we going to go back through that and talk about it? Maybe. Are we going to get answers? I didn't write this on here either, but the Donghua, we just got through the part where Xie Lian was reminiscing about being encased in the coffin by Lan Chanshu. We never really found out how long Xie Lian was in the coffin or how he got out. So is that going to be answered? Who knows? We'll find out. But my dogs will probably bark because it's very cold outside. It's very bitterly cold. So I'm stuck in my house, and I'm like, what better way to warm up than with some Heaven Official's blessing? So we're going to get started here. I don't have to time anything on the screen, but we'll start anyway in 3. It's old habit. 2 and 1. So yeah, while Xie Lian opened his eyes, he found himself lying on the floor inside a strange house. This puzzled him. This already seems kind of like the incense burner chapters, so I'm curious because we all know how those went. He had been training at the Royal Cultivation Hall on Mount Taisang. How did he end up here? Confused, Xie Lian sat up. He noticed he was wearing a simple white cultivation robe, but it was too simple. It was starkly basic, as if he were some peasant. The material wasn't great either. It was coarse and chafed his skin. So is this different than his normal white robes? Xie Lian frowned. He wanted to climb up to his feet, and yet, as he straightened up, he noticed further signs of discomfort from his body. His waist was sore, his legs were sore, his lower belly was sore, his neck was sore. Was it because he'd been lying there and covered on the floor the entire night? Surely not. He was hardly so delicate. Where were Feng Shen and Mu Qing? As they came to mind, Xie Lian called out Feng. He promptly dissolved into a fit of coughing and was left utterly baffled. His throat didn't feel great either. Is this all, I'm not saying him being sore all over his body and his throat being sore has anything to do with anything sexual, but maybe. The night before, Feng Shen and Mu Qing had argued again over something trivial. They were so loud that Xie Lian couldn't concentrate on his meditation, so he ordered them to go outside and train idioms. He'd gotten drowsy as he listened to them train 200 idioms or more while continually blowing their tops, so he headed off to rest. Had he woken up in this unbelievable, hugely perplexing situation? How? Xie Lian finally pulled himself to his feet using the table next to him and surveyed his surroundings. This place was probably an inn, but if he chose to stay in an inn instead of camping outdoors, he wouldn't select one that looked so economical. What? His hands and feet weren't bound, nor were the doors and windows locked, meaning he wasn't being detained. If someone or something had ambushed him, why would they toss him in here? The more Xie Lian thought about the situation, the more peculiar he found it, particularly his current physical condition. With aching arms, he stripped off his outer robe to check for injuries, and yet, when he looked down at himself, the blood instantly drained from his face. Amorous red marks covered him densely from chest to stomach. It was, it was as though a shower of oversized flower petals had fallen and landed on his jade fair skin and bloomed into blossoms of vivid red, so very red that he was left deeply unsettled. Is he covered in hickeys? What? Wait, what? Oh, he threw himself in a nearby mirror, and it was just as he'd expected. It wasn't just his chest and midriff. The marks covered his neck and back, too. Xie Lian was shocked speechless. He didn't dare remove any more clothing down further below for further checks, as it was already more than obvious what had happened. During the period he'd been unconscious, someone had taken his virginity. What? What are we doing? What? Incense chapters 2.0. What? For the first time in his life, Xie Lian understood what the phrase legs going weak meant, but he ultimately managed to stay upright and steady. Oh my God, what is happening? A long time ago, he'd heard horrible gossip from the palace maidens who attended him. Tales of shady establishments run by evil crooks who specialized in rape and sex trafficking. They would drug girls and commit their crimes, but... Xie Lian clutched his head and mumbled to no one, but I'm a man. Okay, on the one hand, the idea that this was actually Hua Cheng is like, but then Xie Lian, you think of where he is right now, and Xie Lian's current state is that he thinks he's been sexually assaulted, and you're like, oh, well, never mind, this isn't fun anymore. Xie Lian's really worried. And then to add on the fact of MXTX making the statement that Xie Lian's like, but I'm a man, and it's like, well, men can be sexually assaulted as well. Oh, never mind, non-consent is no fun, so maybe Xie Lian just forgot, and he'll remember, and it's all a dream. His appearance right now was unseemly to the extreme. In addition to the kiss marks and fingerprint bruises from a heavy hand, there was mortifyingly enough bite marks. Xie Lian covered his face, feeling his mind burn while his body ran cold. Then something extremely serious hit him. Oh no! In the cultivation method he practiced, carnal acts were strictly forbidden. Didn't this mean he'd broken that precept? Quickly he tried to test his spiritual powers. Sure enough, there was nothing. Oh no! Oh, Xie Lian. Xie Lian had always been a calm person, but under the current circumstances, he was on the verge of breaking down. He didn't know how this had happened, but he found himself like that when he woke up. Feng Shen and Mu Qing were both gone, and someone had done something somehow, and now he wasn't a virgin anymore. He really was going to fall apart. So I'm very curious how this works with, if he does end up doing the deed with Hua Cheng, how does that affect his cultivation methods? Even after trying to compose himself for a long moment, he still couldn't accept this. He was in a tizzy. Nevertheless, he couldn't just stay as he was, so he grabbed his clothes and scrambled into them before rushing out of the inn. No one on the road stopped him as he went, and Xie Lian sighed in relief at that. He didn't have a mind to care about the oddness of his surroundings, from the architecture to the dress of the pedestrians to the accents around him. He doesn't know where he is. Perhaps it was just the shame he felt, but he kept thinking that everyone could tell what had happened to him and were giving him odd, appraising looks. This urged him to walk faster and faster until finally he broke out in a mad dash. He charged into a small forest and slammed his fist into one tree, snapping it with a crack. "Jerk!" he shouted angrily. That is not the word I would use to describe someone that I think had assaulted me, but okay. He wanted to curse the one who had abused him with the most malicious words there were, but again and again all he could come up with was jerk, scumbag, sleaze. He felt stifled, unable to vent the fire inside of him. And there was no way he would burst into tears. All he could do was set his mind to furiously swinging his fists with a bang, 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 bang. He knocked down dozens of trees in a row. At last, the local lord of soil and ground crawled out and hugged his leg. Oh, the local lord of soil and ground. You know, the mini Earthmaster, of course. I like also how Xie Lian is basically, him and, Lan Wangji, they would get along great punching trees together. Just saying. But I also, before we go any further, even though this is a very serious matter of assault, because I've kind of been in this situation, there is a feeling when there's like the aftermath of something like that, there is a feeling like everyone is watching you. And even when they aren't, your mind instantly goes to that realm of everyone's judging me, everyone's watching me. And it's very heartbreaking. So I'm a little bit sad that this moment that I thought at the beginning was like going to be the spicy, kinky thing between Hua Cheng and Xie Lian has turned into this non-consensual assault that Xie Lian doesn't remember. And I'm like, I hope this works itself out, but I'm curious how. But I'm very sad for Xie Lian because that's a terrible feeling. And I want to give him a hug really, really bad. Oh, Your Highness, please stop hitting things. Although Xie Lian's rage still brimmed within him, this old man gave him pause, as obviously no ordinary human could have popped out of the ground. Well, who are you? Xie Lian demanded. I'm the local lord of soil and ground, Your Highness, said the old man as he wiped away tears. I retired to this little wood to pass my old age. If your elderliness keeps hitting the trees, I'll be made homeless. He's like the Lorax. He's just like, maybe he was the former Earthmaster before Ming Yi and retired to here. Xie Lian knew that his own problems had nothing to do with everyone else, and he shouldn't randomly take this issue out on them. Besides, no matter how insignificant the position, a lord of soil and ground was still a heavenly official. And this one was an elderly official, a senior to whom he needed to show respect, which is hilarious because Xie Lian is 800 years old, and the idea that this is a senior to him, who knows? Thus, Xie Lian arduously pulled back some of his temper and stopped the violence. Who knows? Maybe this guy was from Wuyang. Not Wuyang. Probably not, but still. Oh, forgive me, I was overly riled up, he said, his tone now softened. How about this? I'll compensate you for all the trees I broke. The Lord of Soil and Ground dropped his hands, hugging his leg, and hurriedly assured him, oh, no need. How can I ask your elderliness to pay? Your elderliness. The mere fact that your lordship is willing to talk to me brings light to this humble little god's dwelling. Xie Lian found his words a bit strange. A lord of soil and ground was, in all seriousness, a heavenly official, and this one appeared to be much older than he was, so why was he so afraid of him, and why did he call him your elderliness? He wasn't in the mood to ask about it, though. Sir, you are the lord of soil and ground of this area, correct? You must be very familiar with this region. Might you aid me in seeking out 2 individuals? Xie Lian asked politely as his hand dug into his sleeve to reach for a few pieces of gold foil as an offering. The Lord of Soil and Ground waved his hands wildly when he saw what Xie Lian was doing. Oh, no need for that. No. Whom does my lord seek? Just as well, for Xie Lian didn't manage to pull out anything. He took his hand back out. My 2 servants, Feng Xin and Mu Qing, he replied. The Lord of Soil and Ground's expression suddenly turned very strange. What's the matter? Is there a problem? Xie Lian asked. Oh, no problem, said the Lord of Soil and Ground. It's just... It's just what's wrong with His Highness. It's been 800 years, so why is he still calling General Nanyang and General Sean Jin his servants? Would the generals get mad about this? Oh, gosh, forget it. So is this the present time and Xie Lian's just forgetful and just dreaming? What? Those two getting angry isn't as scary as that Lord getting angry if this Lord isn't taken care of well of. Oh, so this is the present and Hua Cheng is that Lord he doesn't want to make angry. Xie Lian, why are you being forgetful? What's going on? Thus, he said, well, please wait here for a moment, your lordship. I'll go find them right for you now. Thank you for your trouble, Xie Lian said. He was about to bow in courtesy, but when he looked up, the deity was already gone. His forehead was still burning, and he pressed a hand over it. Sometime later, a confused voice came from ahead. What's going on? I wonder if he's sick. Maybe he's sick and having like a fever dream, right? He looked up and saw Feng Xin and Mu Qing, but they weren't the same Feng Xin and Mu Qing that he knew. Sure, their general appearance was the same, but their demeanor had changed. They didn't seem like two rash young men, but more like generals with years of battle experience under their belts. Moreover, both were wearing black robes that looked rather sumptuous, quite unlike the dress that ordinary folks wore, and quite unlike anything Xie Lian had ever seen them wear. The one who had spoken was Feng Xin, and he walked over. Your Highness, what are you doing out here by yourself? That's what I was going to ask, Xie Lian said. Where did you two run off to? I told you guys to train idioms outside last night, but why could I not find a shadow of you this morning? An odd look that matched the Lord of Soil and Grounds crossed both Feng Xin and Mu Qing's faces, like they couldn't comprehend what he was saying. Xie Lian felt his head splitting, and he cried, and what's with these outfits? What in the world is going on? Feng Xin looked down at himself, wondered and confused. What's wrong with my outfit? Isn't this normal? Mu Qing, on the other hand, said, what are you talking about? Are you still addled from sleep? I was certainly not at your place last night. Oh my God, is Xie Lian having a senile moment? Is Xie Lian having an old man dementia moment? Are we doing this? Xie Lian clutched his head, wanting to scream and shout, but he forced himself to be calm. After thinking for a moment, he said, I get it. Something has overtaken both of you, right? Just like me? The odd looks on Mu Qing and Feng Xin's faces only grew odder. I'm confused, Feng Xin said. Your Highness, why don't you just tell us why you called us here? Mu Qing rolled his eyes. Don't bother. I was wondering why he called us and not him. His brains are probably fried. Oh no! Xie Lian couldn't follow their exchange at all. Well, him who? The state preceptor? Feng Xin and Mu Qing exchanged a look of dismay, and Mu Qing took a step forward. Your Highness, he called. What? Xie Lian answered. My memory is a little fuzzy right now, Mu Qing said. Can you tell me what we've been doing the past few days? Well, haven't we been training at the Royal Cultivation Hall? Xie Lian said. Where's Hua Cheng? Mu Qing asked. The sound of that name was extremely familiar, but when Xie Lian considered further, he couldn't simply place it. He asked, sounding lost. Hua Cheng, who's that? Oh my God, what? There was a long silence. Very good, I get it, Mu Qing said at last. He shot a look at Feng Xin, and the two went to the side to talk. Oh my God, and of course we're not going to hear what they say. They figured out what's going on, but what? Xie Lian suddenly found them somewhat suspicious. What did you get? He asked on alert. What are you two talking about? Once an agreement had been reached, the two backed around. Your Highness, let's go, Feng Xin said. Xie Lian was even more suspicious now. Where to? To someone who can solve this problem, answered Mu Qing. Come. Xie Lian was wary and backed away. Mu Qing noticed that he wanted to flee and cried, Oh, don't go! As he swung his arm out and shot forth a streak of spiritual light that seemed meant to bind Xie Lian. As if Xie Lian was going to stick around, he bolted. No! Xie Lian's great at running away! No! Feng Xin and Mu Qing were both utterly perplexed, and they yelled at each other as they ran after him. Oh, what the fuck? What the actual fuck? Feng Xin cried. What's wrong with him? He can't seriously have memory loss this bad, forgetting 800 years? Finally, his brain is finally shot after eating so much random crap. Mu Qing yelled. Oh, and by eating so much crap, he means his own cooking, but you could say it another way, but okay. That's impossible. Something probably happened when he went out by himself. Let's hurry and find him. His mind is only 17 years old right now. Even at a time like this, Mu Qing couldn't resist making a sarcastic jab. Yeah, and he's innocent and naive and silly to boot. A pampered, spoiled 17-year-old crown prince. Wait, let's tell him first. Quick, tell him. He, of course, must be informed of this. Oh my God! This is the Incense chapters, part 2. I'm happy with this. Xie Lian ran for over a dozen kilometers in one breath and only began to pant after he'd stopped. He still felt like he was lost inside, a massive cloud of fog, trapped in a giant net of peril. What in the world was going on? This wasn't normal. Everything was too abnormal. Did he get his brains effed out so much that he lost his memory? Is that what happened? Did Hua Cheng screw him so hard he literally forgot 800 years worth of information? Because, of course, he knew exactly what Muqing was capable of. Creating that spiritual light would have taken him several hundred years of cultivation at minimum. There was no way he could be the real Muqing. He must have been an imposter. Oh. And as for himself, he wasn't normal either. Through this run, he discovered that he was as light as a swallow. Well, he was already light as a swallow, but his agility had somehow increased exponentially. He was even more formidable now. Everything was wrong. He calmed down, calmed down, calmed down. Once he did, it suddenly occurred to Xie Lian that Muqing had mentioned a name. Hua Cheng, he murmured. For some reason, his heart stirred as he said the name. Even though it should have been very foreign to him, it was as if a small flower had bloomed in the corner at the bottom of his heart. He repeated the name again and again, unable to help himself. Hua Cheng, Hua Cheng, Hua Cheng. This person was probably an immensely significant character. Perhaps he played a critical role in this incident. Xie Lian had to find him. Yeah, I'm sure he played a critical role. Yes. With his mind made up, Xie Lian headed for the city. When he first realized what happened to his body, Xie Lian couldn't accept it at all, but he'd gotten over it in less than an hour later. While his body and mind were still in turmoil, the mystifying situation at hand had left him no time to panic. The real function and Muqing were missing, which only proved that the evil mastermind was a terrible creature. He had to get a hold of himself immediately and uncover the truth. Thus, by the time he entered town, he had regained his usual composure. Though he hadn't the mind to drink tea, he picked a tea house at random and sat by the window on the upper level. Xie Lian picked up the cup on the table and glanced at it. It was caked with years of stains that couldn't be wiped clean. Even a single look at it made him weary, so he placed the cup back down and ignored it. Interesting! In the tea house, there was a relatively attractive and graceful woman playing a pipa and singing like a warbler. A group of men, old and young, sat around her and snickered as they watched. The woman was singing an ordinary local song, something about a girl going out in the morning to pick flowers. But she hadn't sung it for long before the group of men began hollering at her. Ah, bah, how boring. Next. Yeah, this song is bad. Change it up, change it up. Sing this one. Helpless, the songstress had to comply with the crowd and switch to a rather titillating tune. Gently and slowly she plucked the strings, and she sang with a voice so sweet and supple it made one blush. Satisfied at last, the audience cheered and applauded. In contrast, it made Xie Lian feel a little uncomfortable as he sat in his window seat at the corner of the second floor. Listening close to the lyrics, he found the ballad had described the intense love and passion of a newlywed couple on their wedding night. It was extremely audaciously explicit. And Xie Lian had never heard such perverted songs in the royal capital. In the past, he would have brushed it off with a foul breeze that blew past his ears. It would have had nothing to do with him, for he would never in his life think of such things, but now it was different. Although he had no memory of what had happened, the act had been done. So singing and listening to a song about the subject affected him differently. And he also discovered something terrifying. His thoughts were no longer under his control. A few shameless lyrics made his heart wander wildly. Broken, fragmented images continuously poured into his head. Two hands tightly intertwined. Oh, this is jogging his memory of what happened? Two hands tightly intertwined. A red string desperately entangled between the fingers. How could he almost hear the broken gasps, the pleading whimpers, and the coaxing murmurs of a certain man? Oh my God! Oh! Scandalo! What were these images? What the heck were they? Embarrassed and frustrated, Xie Lian bit his bottom lip and clenched his fists. At last, unable to bear it any longer, he slammed his fists violently on the table. The loud bang made the patrons at the nearby table stare at him with wide eyes. Only then did Xie Lian snap out of it and mumble an apology. He desperately wished he could cover his ears with his hands and block out the song. If the songstress kept it up, he'd have to leave. All of a sudden, the singing came to an abrupt stop, and a sharp cry pulled him from his wandering thoughts. Xie Lian's head shot up, and he saw that a large group of men had surrounded the girl and were attempting to grope her. Oh, now, come on now. Make up your mind, MXTX. Do you want us to feel like spicy about this chapter or horrible? The songstress stood up in shock, hugging her Pippa to her chest tightly. Sirs, just listen to the songs. Please don't touch me, she pleaded. Some of the men started kicking up a fuss. So what if we feel you up? There's no way we're the ones who've done it. I refuse to believe you've never gotten yourself touched while you're out here selling yourself. Oh! The songstress was so obsessed her eyes grew red around the rims. What do you mean selling myself? I'm selling my voice, not my body. The men purposefully ignored her. Oh, you talk like you're so chaste. If you were really so proper, then you wouldn't be out here selling yourself. Yeah, you sang such a provocative song, and now you turn around and say you're not selling your mouth as offering? Chaste my ass, what a joke. The songstress was going to pass out from anger. You're the ones who told me to sing it, she exclaimed, her voice trembling. I only sang it because all of you made me. Yet no matter what she said, the awful patrons always had a comeback. Well, you sang it because we told you so, so obedient. Only goes to show that deep down you wanted to sing something like this and seduce people. Xie Lian couldn't listen anymore. He was already in a bad mood, and now his rage was peaking. There was a flash of white, and before those rowdy men had any clue what was happening, a row of them had already been knocked to the ground. Good job, Xie Lian. Who the hell are you? Yelled the ringleader of the group, whose ass was now facing the sky. You dare to provoke us? Xie Lian stood in front of the songstress and shielded her. He cracked his knuckles, though he did not allow his anger to show on his face. Quit while you're ahead, he said darkly. Anyone would be moved by the sight of a flower-like beauty. But if you do not understand how to treat her with respect, then you are shamefully classless. Yes! Go! Well, she's the one who sang the song, someone complained. She can sing, but we can't touch. Correct! Xie Lian repeated each word slowly and firmly, and threw several large men down the stairs as he did. She can sing, but you can't touch. Ah, yes, thank you, thank you. MXTX, make that statement. Let's go, girl. The men landed on their behinds in a terrible tizzy. The fall wasn't actually a serious one, but it was more than enough to frighten them. And since no one could even see his lightning-fast moves, there was no chance of fighting back, and they fled in a hurry. When Xie Lian turned back at the top of the stairs, the songstress curtsied him in immense gratitude. Thank you so much for helping me, Dao Zhang, she said. It required no effort on my part, Xie Lian said. Miss, are you going to be staying here? The songstress nodded, so Xie Lian nodded in return. Very well, then keep singing your songs. And with a whirl of his sleeves, he sat back down with upright pose to stand guard over her. The other men saw that he wasn't leaving and was keeping an eye on the place, so they didn't dare harass the girl anymore. Understanding his intention, the songstress felt even more grateful. As she carefully began to sing once again, she picked one of the same lively local tunes that she'd been performing at first. Xie Lian poured himself a cup of tea, but just as he was about to drink it, he noticed the heavy stains again. After brief hesitation, he still couldn't win against himself, and put down the cup with a sigh. As he idly turned his head, he paused. He saw a man sitting in a far more magnificent red tavern across the street. A red tavern across the street. A red tavern across the street, you say. You say, oh my God. What we got here? The man was rather tall and dressed in all red. Although he wore a black eye patch that added an air of wildness to him, it couldn't obscure his handsome features. Robes redder than maple, skin white as snow, a silver flagon in his hand that shimmered like the two silver vambraces around his wrists. At a glance, he was exceptionally eye-catching, and he was looking this way. Their eyes met. When the man saw Xie Lian had noticed his gaze, he smiled and raised his flagon slightly, as if he was toasting him. For some reason, when Xie Lian's eyes met that man's, it felt like lightning coursing through him. He quickly averted his gaze, but while he pretended not to care, his heart started to race. How strange. The man certainly was dazzling, and he had a mysterious appeal, but it wasn't as if Xie Lian had never seen an attractive man before. Why was he reacting like this at the sight of him? Yes, we'll talk about this in a second. He pondered for a moment and amended the last thought, for it wasn't correct. Upon reflection, he knew he had never met a man as dazzling and handsome as this one. Ah! He's a rare character. I should pay more attention, Xie Lian thought. Oh, of course, yes. Yes. When he turned his head to look again, however, the man had had disappeared. Just like that. He was like a splendid falling maple leaf that had mischievously fluttered across his vision, stunning him and disappearing in an instant. It was almost unreal, like a fleeting dream. Trying to be inconspicuous about it, Xie Lian peered at the magnificent tavern across the way for a while. When he could find no trace of the man, he gave up. He exhaled softly, uncertain of whether he was really feeling disappointed. Oh well, he thought, rubbing his forehead. Yet, when he turned his head, there was someone sitting across from him. Xie Lian, he held a hand propping up his cheek, and he was staring at Xie Lian. When their eyes met, Xie Lian's mind went blank. The man, however, simply said with a wide grin, Dao Zhang, would you mind that you treat me to a cup of wine? Okay. So putting this kind of on pause here for a second. I like the idea of, so we have Xie Lian, who has lost his memory somehow, has Hua Cheng screwed the brains out of him? Possibly. But I like the idea of the songstress. So the songstress was just singing. That's all she was doing, was minding her own business, singing the local folk songs. And then the public tries to make her do what they want. They wanted her to sing the provocative songs. And then when she did sing them, they decided to try to take advantage of her and say that it was her fault, even though she did what they asked him to. I feel like there's an overarching message here that goes back to Xie Lian himself, right? Where Xie Lian was just doing what he wanted to do. He wanted to be, wanted to cultivate, wanted to do this and that. And then throughout the story, by Wu Sheng and by the common people he encounters, and as a god, the people, this kind of reminds me of the situation where Xie Lian, once he ascends and is a heavenly official, the people that are worshiping him try to tell him what to be and what to do. They're like, oh, are you the god of marriage? Are you the god of this? Are you going to do that? Are you going to give us good fortune? And they try to tell him what to do. And Xie Lian's kind of like, I just wanted to cultivate and do what I was originally doing. I didn't want to have this. And it also seems like a way that it's a representation of how the public and how the common people started to take advantage of Xie Lian and violated his body, like with the stabbing of the sword at the temple and with praying to him and making the statues to hate him and all of that. It just seems like they were constantly trying to take, advantage and hurt him. And then the concept gets brought up of, oh, well, can she do this, but we can't do that? And it's like, yes, no, that's exactly right. She can sing, but you can't touch. That is no means no. And yes, she can put herself out there, but that doesn't mean you have to take it. It's not for you, right? And I love that. I love the idea that Xie Lian kind of says, no, this is how it is. And it's like, it's a beautiful moment and it's a beautiful message. Thank you, MXTX. I was really getting worried because this first chapter, it's like when you realize the innuendo and what it means, you're like, oh, this is kind of kinky. But then when like the assault gets brought into it and all this, and this poor songstress, you're like, oh, am I supposed to feel really uncomfortable now? And so I'm glad that we're kind of, Xie Lian solved that problem. We've resigned that whole plot point, and now maybe Hua Cheng has arrived to get us back on track. Maybe, possibly. We hope, right? So I want to make a note of when this chapter ends so that we can take some more notes if needed. I'm just going to kind of like find the part where this ends. Okay. And make a little note. See? Right here. I love these little magnetic bookmarks. They help me like to keep track of it. All right. So here we go. We're going to do part 2. The Strange Amnesiac Adventures of His Highness the Crown Prince, part 2. It was the man in red who had toasted him from afar earlier, and he sat down so casually in front of Xie Lian. Xie Lian blinked. It took him a moment to be certain that this man was really talking to him. He immediately got a hold of himself. He couldn't allow this man's powerful presence to shake him. Maintaining his calm, he politely replied, "Unfortunately, I abstain from alcohol. It seems I won't be able to treat you to a cup." The man in red laughed aloud and got even more comfortable in the seat. "Oh, is that right? But Dao Zhang, your face seems gripped by distress. Surely liquor will be helpful." "My lord must be mistaken," Xie Lian stated without further reaction. Although the most important precept of his cultivation method had been broken, he knew he mustn't abandon his work and give up the other, lesser precepts. He had been distant and mild this whole time, but the man clearly had no intention of leaving. Instead, it seemed like he'd settled in. "If Dao Zhang won't treat me, then shall I help myself?" Xie Lian glanced at him and looked around. Weird. It wasn't like there weren't empty seats around, so why did he have to sit at this table to drink? There was no reason to refuse this, however, so Xie Lian replied, go ahead. The man gave him a lazy wave. The waiter at the restaurant had never encountered a patron of this caliber, and hardly daring to breathe, he hurriedly brought over a flagon and a cup and wiped the table vigorously for fear of mistreating the guest. Seeing how relaxed and comfortable this man in red appeared as he drank by himself, Xie Lian couldn't resist asking, does my lord ask everyone to treat you to a cup of wine when meeting for the first time? Oh no, the man said, grinning. To tell you the truth, Daozhong, most people usually never even get to see my face. His tone was rather arrogant, but Xie Lian didn't find it unpleasant. They sat together, each in their own world. Xie Lian kept his eyes staring elsewhere, trying to appear wholly calm. After a while, the man spoke up once more. With a hand still propping up his cheek, he asked, might I ask your name, Daozhong? What shall I call you? Xie Lian made up a surname without much thought and replied, my surname is Hua. Shut up. The man raised an eyebrow. Oh, Hua Daozhong. What shall I call you, my lord? Xie Lian asked. You can simply call me San Long, Daozhong. The man said. Xie Lian could tell he didn't want to give his real identity, but he wasn't going to force the issue. He thought for a moment, but he couldn't recall any notable characters who were ranked third in their family, so he stopped trying to figure it out. Suddenly, which of course he's the third supreme, San Long. It first went by Hua Cheng, He Shan, and then San Long. Ah, nice. I think maybe we figured that out before, but okay. Suddenly he noticed the lock of San Long's jet black hair next to his cheek was tied with a thin red braid. A red coral pearl was fastened to the end of it. The bead was small and softly lustrous. It was clearly worth a hefty fortune, but Xie Lian had the nagging feeling he'd seen it somewhere before. Maybe in his bedchamber amidst the other gems, the precious stones that were scattered all over the floor, he couldn't be sure. San Long noticed his stare. You like this? Raising his long, slender, fair fingers, he gently caught the red coral pearl and gave it a squeeze. As Xie Lian watched him, for some reason he felt a sudden pinch on his chest, as if he'd also just been squeezed somewhere. He jerked back violently, a large movement that attracted the attention of several nearby patrons. San Long nonchalantly looked up and asked, sounding shocked, Daozhong, what's the matter? He extended a hand as though to offer assistance, but of course Xie Lian didn't take it, and he quickly sat back down properly. Oh, no, it's nothing, that bead. Oh? The smile playing on San Long's lips was undiminished. This bead? He knows exactly what he's doing. What is going on? Come on now. He started toying with the brilliant coral pearl that increased fervor and continued with a smile. This was a gift for my beloved spouse. What do you think of it, Daozhong? Xie Lian was gagged into momentary silence. It's very, very nice. He had no idea what he was saying, none at all. The hands he'd settled on his laps were clenched into fists, and he felt like he was sitting on needles. This stranger in red was clearly just playing with that pretty delicate bead. It was a simple act, and yet Xie Lian could sense an undercurrent of lavishness. It was like the jewel he held between his fingers and rubbed so slowly, so gently, wasn't a red pearl at all, but some sensitive part of his body. What is happening? What? Xie Lian felt his face grow inexplicably hot, and his breathing turned harsh. He was in a miserable state. This was not normal. This was definitely not normal. Is that pearl like, did they do some kind of voodoo spell and tie it to parts of their body? Is this some kind of kink they have? What? As handsome as this man in red, this San Long was, there was an inexplicable evil aura that surged around him and made Xie Lian want to stutter. Alarms blared in his head, and he forced himself to calm, steadying his breathing. Oh yeah, red flags all around. Oh my God. Staring dauntlessly at this man, he asked, may I ask for what purpose my lord has approached me? San Long flashed a smile. Why so cautious? It wasn't for any particular reason. I was simply enchanted by your striking grace and couldn't resist coming over, that's all. He explained unhurriedly. Please forgive me if I've offended you in any way, Daozhong. Is this some game they're playing? Is this some game? Did Xie Lian, like, intentionally forget and Hua Cheng's like, I'm going to seduce you all over again? Is this their foreplay? Is this just a game? What? Xie Lian turned his eyes away, not knowing whether to believe him. He was beginning to regret letting this man sit across from him and cause so much confusion in his mind. The songstress had packed up. She gave a bow to the crowd and flashed Xie Lian a sweet smile before gracefully making her exit. With her gone, there was no reason for Xie Lian to stay either. Farewell, and take your time and enjoy your wine, my lord, he said as he rose to his feet. At your leisure. He had intended for his parting words to come out sharply, but they were nonetheless delivered with courtesy when they reached the tip of his tongue. Not daring to look at the man in red a moment more, Xie Lian practically ran down the stairs. He wandered the streets randomly for a while and only breathed a sigh of relief when he was sure no one had followed him. But when he stopped to rest, he felt lost. I like this image of Hua Cheng being like, come on, Gege. Come on. Oh, what is happening? His clothes were gone. His belongings were gone. His sword was gone. His servants were gone. Even his spiritual powers were gone. Not once in his 17 years of life had he found himself like this, completely adrift with no idea what to do. Xie Lian shook off those thoughts and stopped a passerby to ask where he was. The passerby answered his question, but it was a place Xie Lian had never heard of. Might I ask how far the royal capital is from here, and in what direction is it located? The royal capital? He didn't specify that he was referring to the royal capital of Shanla. The royal capital, we're south of the capital, and gosh, plenty far from it, the passerby replied. As Xie Lian had expected, the local dialect and style of architecture were unfamiliar and a little strange. They weren't much like those of the capitals or the regions nearby. He'd already guessed that this must be a very faraway place. Why would the perpetrator bring him all the way here? Xie Lian walked for a while before he came upon a new struggle. He was hungry. As mentioned previously, all of his belongings were gone, including his money, which is why he's glad that the Lord of Soil and Ground didn't take him up on his offer, because he didn't have any money to give him to begin with. Any tokens that could have been used to prove his identity as the Crown Prince had vanished without a trace. He had come up empty earlier when he was trying to rummage his clothing for the gold foil, to offer the Lord of Soil and Ground, and the tiny number of coins he'd scrounged everywhere for had been spent on a seat at the tea house, where he stayed for a while, but all for nothing, as he couldn't stand the stains in the teacup and didn't even drink a sip. His stomach had remained empty. Truly, a hero could be defeated by a penny. Oh my God, and we're just retracing our steps. We're just retracing our steps, right? This is all, these adventures are just, oh my God, these adventures are just following Xie Lian from start to finish, only it's simplified and rewritten in this direction, right? Right? Oh my God, yeah. Also, the fact that Xie Lian couldn't drink out of the stained cup in the past because he's in like the version of him that's 17 versus how we know he is as an adult or 800 years later is interesting. Just as he was frowning over this difficulty, he noticed something shimmering on the ground ahead beside a loose brick. Xie Lian went over and crouched down to flip the brick over. How curious, and to his shock, some pieces of gold foil had been dropped on the ground in this dingy little alley. Is it supposed to be like representing the gold foils in the inn when Shirong was there and it all just collapsed? In addition to gold foil, there were pieces of silver foil and some miscellaneous coins. Finding money on the ground in broad daylight, a free lunch falling in his lap, he honestly couldn't tell if this was good luck or bad. Xie Lian's first reaction after collecting the pile of money was to wonder if it had been dropped by some unsuspecting person. So he walked out of the alley and called out to the passerby on the street, "Excuse me, did anybody drop any of their money?" Of course he has to be that kind, you know, he can't just take the money. Most people shook their head, but there was an idle, good-for-nothing lout who came over looking sheepish, saying, I did. When Xie Lian asked him to confirm how much he dropped, however, he hemmed and hawed and ran off amidst a laughing crowd. Xie Lian stood there and waited patiently, worried the rightful owner would come back in search of his lost money. Yet no one such person approached, even after he waited for nearly 2 hours. His hunger was becoming more and more apparent, and after a long time he let out a sigh. He glanced at the money in his sleeve. Well, why don't I just borrow a bit of it and return it 10 times over afterwards, he thought. There was no other option at this point. Thus, after waiting another instant's time, he bought a steamed bun at a street-side stall. Of course, a bun. Xie Lian had never eaten steamed buns before, never mind ones with such crude dough. It looked so big and stupid and bland. It's like, oh my gosh, like one of his staple foods that we see with him in the present time, and here he can barely eat it, and he's like, oh, this just looks awful. Xie Lian. Nevertheless, he didn't want to use too much of the money that he'd found. It'd be terrible if it turned out to be someone's emergency funds, so he only used the bare minimum. It certainly was a novelty to have such a humongous steamed bun in his hand for the first time in his life. He walked past the alley and came to a smaller, quieter street. Just as he was about to take a bite of the bun, however, a hand suddenly swiped it from him. It was a fantastic steal. Xie Lian had only paused for a moment and the bun was gone. When he turned his head, the one standing next to him was the man in red from the tea house. Oh! Xie Lian was stunned speechless. He had never expected this man to follow him all the way here, or to steal his steamed bun. He was dumbfounded for a while before it occurred to him to reclaim it. "Well, give that back," he cried as he jumped. The man was extremely fast. His grab was fast, but the man was faster, not to mention taller, so the attack was swiftly dodged. "Don't eat this," the man said. Then he took a bite out of the bun, leaving a gap behind. Now Xie Lian couldn't eat the bun even if he wanted to. There was no way to an esteemed crown prince he could eat a steamed bun that someone else had taken a bite of. What an opposite thing from when Hua Cheng took the bite of the bun that Xie Lian gave him. Oh, eyes wide, he exclaimed, "You!" He was left momentarily stumped and then griped angrily, "Why are you like this?" And to think he'd assumed the man was a rare character, someone worthy of befriending. He turned out to be a capricious lout. Their two figures, one red and one white, moved so fast it dazzled the eyes. No one could believe such an exciting fight was over a steamed bun. Although Xie Lian vaguely suspected that he could be fast enough to keep up with this San Long, there was something he was missing, something he wasn't quite grasping, and his limbs weren't really obeying his control. Moreover, he had spent the entire day tired, annoyed, confused, and achy all over. Distracted by his fury, he twisted his foot and fell. A quiet yelp of pain escaped through the cracks of his teeth. It hurt. An unspeakable pain was spreading from an unspeakable place. This pain had already been there, but it wasn't obvious. The injury had been carefully tended to at some point, and Xie Lian had tried to ignore it. However, his face changed instantly after the fall, and San Long's face too, as he immediately bent down to catch his arm. "Get!" he blurted, but quickly cut himself off and said, "Are you all right?" Oh. So, an unspeakable pain from an unspeakable place. I'm assuming this is referring back to what has happened to him. I'm wondering why Hua Cheng is not saying Gege, but clearly are they trying to ease his memory back? Mortified, Xie Lian desperately wanted to dig a hole and bury his head in it. "Please don't refer to me by any random address," he exclaimed with a burning face, yanking his hand back, "and don't grab me like that either." San Long let him go, but the gesture was only for show as he swiftly clutched Xie Lian's shoulder instead. "Well, how are you? Does it hurt anywhere?" He sounded genuinely, deeply concerned. One does not slap the face of the smiling, or so they say by all rights. Xie Lian should have been grateful for the kindness, but when he thought of where it hurt and why, he was both embarrassed and upset, and the frustrations he'd pent up all day finally spilled over. He slapped San Long's hand away and scrambled to his feet. "I don't hurt anywhere. I don't hurt at all." Oh my god, the "I don't hurt at all, it doesn't hurt." Oh my god, why are we reliving this entire story in these chapters? He turned and tried to run off, but the man behind him caught his wrist, and he couldn't struggle free no matter how he tried. Unable to endure it any longer, Xie Lian whipped around, his eyes round with rage, and yet he was met with the sight of San Long gazing deeply at him. San Long let out a soft sigh. "It's my fault, Daozhong. The blame for everything lies with me alone, so please accept my apology and don't be angry with me anymore. How about this? Won't you let me treat you to another drink and make it up to you?" For some reason, whenever Xie Lian saw this man's face, his heart fluttered. He wasn't used to the feeling, and it only made him want to run. Which is what he's done the whole story, right? "I don't need you to take me anywhere. I never drink. Let me go now." Okay, said San Long. "No drinks. How about a meal then? Surely you must be hungry." Xie Lian was so mad. What was that tone? He was practically cooing to him like he was placating a child. He'd never suffered such humiliation before. Oh my god, Xie Lian's changed so much since he was 17. I do like that at this point in the story, it's as if this extra is MXTX saying, you know, if Xie Lian had met Hua Cheng as an adult when he did after he had ascended, it probably wouldn't have worked out so well. No. Oh. "I don't need you to take me out to eat either. I'm not hungry. Please watch your tongue and show some respect." But the awkward thing was, as soon as he'd spoken, a weak protest grumbled from his stomach. Xie Lian froze and then grew even angrier, so angry it turned his face red. Even his speech started to stutter. Why are you pestering me? Stop pestering me." However, San Long only stared hard at him. "Daozhong, you didn't notice." His sudden, severe expression on Xie Lian had him asking, "Notice what?" "There's an evil creature on you," San Long said. Xie Lian was shocked. Without warning, his wrist went slack, and that wristband-like silk bandage slithered down his hand like a white snake. It raised itself up to eye level with him, and then it lunged. Rui, the man in red, caught it an instant before its strike could land. Do you see? The white silk band squirmed like a choked venomous snake. It was creepy. And this monster had been hiding on him all this time. Xie Lian understood at last. He blinked and said, "So you approached me because you detected this evil creature hiding on me?" San Long's expression had gone much more serious and severe. "Yes, this creature is quite strange, which was why I was keeping an eye on it. Thank goodness it didn't hurt you." There's so many levels to this. It's like, is this part of Hua Cheng trying to get Xie Lian's memory back? Is it making a reference to Bai Wusheng? Is it making a reference to the poisonous snakes? Is Rui in on the game? Okay, now the truth was out. It was clear that San Long had approached him out of goodwill. Recalling how rude he had been to this gentleman, pulling faces and slapping his hand away, it made Xie Lian embarrassed. He bent forward into a solemn bow. "Oh, thank you very much, sir. I was mistaken earlier." Before he could fully bend at the waist, San Long stopped him. "Oh, please, it was nothing." Xie Lian looked up, feeling somewhat confused. He got the impression that although this man in red appeared wholly serious, his eye was full of smiles. He figured it was because he'd shown the man the absolute state of disarray he was in, and also his uncouth behavior, and it was a little embarrassing. Though it was strange. Xie Lian was far more restrained and dignified than most others his age, yet the mere sight of this man rendered him restless and agitated. I can't imagine why! San Long didn't seem to notice his discomfort, though, and said, "Since all is resolved, I'll be on my way. Daozhong, shall I see you next time?" "Yes, see you next time," Xie Lian replied without thinking. Curious that he gave up so quickly. San Long waved and then turned around and left, and despite himself, Xie Lian followed for a few steps. Maybe it was because he didn't really know where to go, or because his mind was addled, but Xie Lian only snapped out of it when San Long looked back. He was startled out of his reverie and stopped abruptly, pretending to look elsewhere, but it was too late. The light laughter from up ahead embarrassed Xie Lian so badly his earlobes turned red. He forced himself to look again, and San Long was standing there with his arms crossed. "Let's not wait for next time," San Long said with a chuckle. "I think the time is now. What do you think? Is Daozhong finally willing to have a drink with me?" Okay. They returned to the same magnificent restaurant from before. The man in red, who Xie Lian had just become acquainted with, was very generous, and he ordered an entire tableful of the best dishes the restaurant had to offer. Surprisingly, the restaurant's fare wasn't any lower quality than imperial cuisine, and many of the dishes were novel recipes Xie Lian had never seen or tasted before. Ravenous, he ate, and it was some time before he realized San Long had been watching him unblinkingly the entire time, with his hand propping up one cheek. The gaze almost made Xie Lian feel like he was the dish being eaten. Oh! For good reason. His intense regard made Xie Lian jittery again, like he was sitting on needles. Once he was sure he'd forgotten his manners due to hunger, he placed his chopsticks down and softly cleared his throat. "Excuse me." "Oh, what needs to be excused? Don't mind me," San Long said. "Please continue." Then he took out the steamed bun they'd fought over earlier, and without batting an eye, started to eat it. Now Xie Lian only felt more embarrassed. Shifting straighter in his seat, he glanced at the white silk band and decided it was time to discuss serious business. "Why would this evil creature hide on my person? I'm shocked that I didn't notice its existence. It's almost as if he had been carrying it with him for so long he had gotten used to it being there." The white silk band kept swinging its head and wagging its tail like it was trying to swim over to him. Oh my God. Had it not been firmly kept in place by San Long, it would have already wrapped around Xie Lian like a zongji. It seemed rather enamored by him. San Long pinned it to the table with a chopstick, denying it any chance to tackle Xie Lian. "It seems this evil creature has some very bad habits. It needs to be trained," he said with a smile. "Well, rather than train it, let's figure out exactly where it came from," Xie Lian said. The two of them chatted about this and that and everything. Xie Lian had grown up in the royal palace of Shanla and cultivated at the royal cultivation hall. He had never met anyone so interesting and so knowledgeable. As he listened to San Long talk, Xie Lian's eyes were bright and a broad smile painted across his face, and he could almost toss all his troubles to the back of his mind. It was a long while before he remembered that he was in the middle of a bizarre maelstrom. He straightened his expression and said, "San Long, can I ask you about someone?" San Long threw the white silk band to the ground and did something that made it too weak to jump back up. He's like, oh yeah, forget Rui, get him out of here. Who? It's like this, Xie Lian said. I'm looking for someone named Hua Cheng. When he heard the name, San Long quirked an eyebrow. Can I ask you what you hope to achieve by finding him? To be honest, I don't know, Xie Lian said earnestly. Judging by the man's tone, he clearly knew who Hua Cheng was, so he added, maybe you think I'm lying to you, but it's true. I don't know what I hope to achieve by finding him, but I woke up today and I found myself in a very strange state. He told the whole story in one breath, leaving out the unspeakable, mortifying details. So this man might be a key to figuring out what happens, Xie Lian finished. San Long, if you know who he is, would you please tell me more if you don't mind? Oh, it's not a matter of if I don't mind, San Long chuckled. Daozhong, of course I'll help you. It already feels like we've known each other forever. As for Hua Cheng, Xie Lian listened intently, all his attention on the man before him. Yes, he's a madman. How is he mad? San Long poured a cup of wine and picked it up. He's a devotee. Whose? The Crown Prince of Shanla. Oh, Xie Lian quickly swallowed and coughed, swallowed the tea in his mouth before he started sputtering. Oh, wait a second, hang on. The Crown Prince of Shanla hasn't even become a god yet, so how could he become a devotee? Oh, he will be, though, sooner or later, San Long replied nonchalant. Besides, there's nothing to being a god, really. If you say you're a god, then you're a god. If you say you aren't, then you aren't. He considers the Crown Prince a god, and that's all there is to it. Ah! Well, that's too random. Xie Lian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Ah! But after a pause, he asked quietly, does he really believe His Highness will become a god for certain? He doesn't believe, San Long said slowly, and his lips widened into a grin. He knows. Xie Lian grinned back, but he thought to himself, then I mustn't let him down. Ah! He crossed his arms and asked, so where can I meet this Hua Cheng? Do you really want to meet him, Daozhong? Asked San Long. I do. San Long didn't seem to agree with that course of action, but Hua Cheng is an awful person. Xie Lian's brows furrowed. Well, awful? How so? He refused to believe that someone who was so sure he would become a god was a bad person. Well, San Long started. Just then, Xie Lian noticed something. Up until now, he'd been very cautious of San Long, so he hadn't looked straight at him. But now that they'd interacted for a while and gotten to know each other, he was finally relaxing a little and let his eyes wander. One of San Long's arms was slung across the railing, his finger tapping on it idly. They were long, slender digits, and the third was tied with a red, thin string, a bright red infinity knot. Xie Lian immediately recalled the chaotic images that flashed through his mind when the songstress sang, two hands with fingers tightly interwoven between satin curtains. Upon the top hand in that image, there was a red string just like that. Oh my god! Oh my god! So this is so interesting because we don't know why Xie Lian has lost his memory, what the whole deal is. Like, Xie Lian, why have you lost your memory? What's going on? But clearly, I like that Hua Cheng, just like he's been this entire story, is not going to just come out and tell Xie Lian. He's going to let him work it out for himself, and he's going to be the supportive partner that he is, and let him figure it out. Clearly, Mu Qing and Feng Xin know what's going on, so they're letting this happen, and they went to go tell Hua Cheng about it, so... Has this happened before? I don't know, but we're on part 3, so I guess we're going to find out. Xie Lian's eyes widened, his face a picture of disbelief. Well, what's wrong? Asked San Long, as if Xie Lian could utter a word. The deception, the mortification, the frustration of being toyed with. Oh, because he realizes who it was. His feelings of betrayal mixed with the hot blood rushing to his head. He slapped the table and ground with each word through his teeth. So it was you! The table couldn't withstand his strike and splintered to pieces. Thankfully, there was no one else on the second floor. Otherwise, they'd be sent scurrying in fright. Xie Lian had no weapons with him, so he struck out his palm once more. Nonetheless, San Long stayed in his seat and merely tilted his head to avoid the attack. The strike landed on the wall behind him instead, and debris crumbled down upon impact. San Long remained in place with his arms crossed. He looked up lightly, raising the curtains of his lashes. Dao Zhang, what is the meaning of this? Xie Lian's face was burning. He couldn't imagine how red it had gotten. He cracked the knuckles at the top of his other hand and hissed, his voice full of fury. You, stop pretending. You know exactly what you did to me. San Long raised his gaze further. Most unfortunate. But I my bookmark's in place, but I really don't know what I've done to make you so angry. Dao Zhang, please enlighten me. This man dared to say it out loud. While acting so innocent, how could he possibly say it? How could he talk about that in broad daylight? Xie Lian had never encountered anyone like this before, and he was so angry his whole body shook from his shoulders to deep inside his heart. He spat out an incoherent string of rebukes as his face grew redder and redder. Silence, you! I'll beat you to death, you shameless, perverted, dishonorable, you! San Long sighed. Dao Zhang, I never expected you to respond to my heartfelt sincerity this way. How am I shameless, perverted, and or dishonorable? Xie Lian finally managed to regain himself somewhat. Don't you dare try to deceive me again. The red string on your hand proves that you're that... Oh? Unflustered, San Long raised his hand. You mean this? Is there something wrong with this red string? The sight of the string in question felt like a stab. I saw it, Xie Lian said. At the time, your hand had a red string just like that. What time? San Long asked. At that moment, Xie Lian really wanted to beat the guy dead, asking him over and over like that. How absolutely abominable. But for some reason, no matter how angry he was, he couldn't attack him. And he wasn't just being restrained by anything other than his own body. Just then, several people ran up the stairs, their feet thumping on the floorboards. Dear customers, what are you doing? Don't randomly smash things. Xie Lian turned his head to exclaim, it's dangerous here. Go. Yet when he saw them, he was stunned again. These people were all wearing red strings on their hands. What's with all the red strings? Xie Lian blurted. Red string, one of them replied. This red string is just a red string. What's so special about it? It's nothing, quack. It's nothing, you know. Oh my God! Oh, the ghosts! Now Xie Lian was confused. Was tying a red string around one's finger a normal fashion trend in these parts? He turned back to San Long. As if he'd seen what he was thinking, San Long said, you guessed right, Dao Zhang. It's a local custom to tie a red string around one's fingers. If you don't believe me, look at the crowd on the street below. Xie Lian's eyes traveled downward, and sure enough, many of the people in the flowing crowd had red strings tied around a finger. There were even some who had tied multiple knots. Well, what custom is this? He asked. San Long smiled. Well, it's related to Hua Cheng now that we're on the topic. Huh? He and his beloved both have tied red strings to their fingers, and many people have followed suit in hope of finding their future spouse or as a symbol of love. Oh my God! Oh, they've started a trend. Oh my God! Oh, all the Ghost City people. They're in the Ghost City, and all the Ghost City people are just doing the same. Oh my God! Xie Lian was stunned to learn about this. So you're saying that Hua Cheng is a formidable character? He's so impressive that people are obsessed with imitating him? Well, whether he's formidable depends on who you compare him to, San Long said. By the way, Dao Zhang, you seem to have dropped something. May I pick it up? Xie Lian finally realized that he'd made another blunder, and his temper quickly dispersed. He had been maintaining an attacking stance, but now he quickly relaxed it. Oh, I'm so sorry, San Long. I'm really sorry. I got ahead of myself and I misunderstood you again. San Long had remained relaxed the entire time. He bent to pick something off the floor. It's fine. Dao Zhang, did you drop this? What he'd fumbled for out of the mess on the floor was a single piece of gold foil that had slipped out of Xie Lian's sleeves when he attacked earlier. Xie Lian was about to answer when San Long brought the foil close and squinted at it. This gold foil looks rather familiar. Then he unhurriedly took something from the pouch at his waist, another piece of gold foil. 2 matching pieces of gold foil. So it was yours, Xie Lian blurted. I certainly did drop some money, which is why I went back to look for it, replied San Long. Terrified that he was going to misunderstand, Xie Lian said hastily, Oh, San Long, let me explain. Oh, no need to be nervous, San Long said. Of course I'll listen to your explanation, Dao Zhang. He's just playing with him at this point. San Long! Xie Lian breathed a sigh of relief. Well, it's like this, he began. I picked up that gold foil on the road earlier. I wanted to wait for the rightful owner to come back and return it, but I waited for over 2 hours and no one came, so I just... He hung his head, feeling a little ashamed, and his voice turned small. So I borrowed a bit of it to buy something to eat, and it was that steam bun. I planned to return the borrowed money multiplied many times over, but Regardless of the reason, I still used it without asking. Forgive me. Sanlong was full of smiles as he listened. There's no need to be like this, Daozhong, he assured him. It's only natural for a person to act this way. And aside from the fact that I already intended to invite you for a drink, wasn't I the one who ate the steamed bun in the end? Don't get hung up on little things. But it's quite amazing, don't you think? What a coincidence that you would be the one to find what I lost. Truly, this is destiny. To find what he had lost. Oh, come on now. Seeing how understanding he was being, Xie Lian relaxed. But Sanlong, you have to be more careful, he chided. It was gleaming so brightly on the side of the road. How did you miss it? Don't be so careless next time. The waiter, who had been cowering to the side, spoke up. Sirs, have you calmed down? Quack. If so, let's settle the cost for breaking the table. Quack. Xie Lian was silent. In his normal life, paying compensation would be nothing to him, no matter how expensive it was. But right now, he couldn't even afford a single steamed bun. It's fine. Put it all on my tab, said Sanlong. He was going to voluntarily pay for the damage Xie Lian had inflicted, even though Xie Lian had clearly attacked him first. Xie Lian was so moved by the sweetness and consideration that he was rendered speechless. He swallowed. You! There was something wrong with the waiter, too. Looking so cheery when they smashed up the place. He even gave them a new, more magnificent table. The two sat back down and Xie Lian couldn't help but feel bad, but also grateful. Oh my god, have they done this before? Is this like something that happens on the regular? Oh no. Daozhong, from what you said earlier, it seems there's a backstory. What's going on? Did someone harm you? Asked a concerned Sanlong. But how could Xie Lian speak of such things? His face flushed in embarrassment again, despite having just calmed down, and he repeated haltingly, It's nothing much. Yet Sanlong pushed, Won't you tell me about it? Maybe Sanlong can help somehow. He might have been coming from a place of goodwill, but Xie Lian felt like his questions were pushing him into a corner, and he shifted uncomfortably in his seat. It was really nothing, he said helplessly. Sanlong, can you not ask any more? It was so hard to speak of it. At his request, Sanlong didn't force the issue. All right. Where were we then? You wanted to meet Hua Cheng, right? Xie Lian regained himself and straightened his expression. Yes, does Sanlong know of a way? Of course, Sanlong said. But it's not easy to see him these days. Why is that? Sanlong pushed the veggies on his plate into a big, smiling face with his chopsticks. Oh my god! Well, he must accompany his beloved, who has apparently fallen unwell recently. He has no time for anything else. Oh my god, and that's literally what he's doing now, is following Xie Lian around because he's unwell. Just as he thought, this Hua Cheng was a sentimental man, too. He placed even more high importance on his feelings. Xie Lian admired him even more. I see, then how long will I have to wait to meet him? At least 3 days. At most 5, said Sanlong. I suggest you try to relax, Daozhong. Why don't you find a place to rest while you wait? So this has happened before, because he knows it takes between 3 to 5 days for Xie Lian's mind to get back to normal. Oh my god. But I have nowhere to stay, he thought. But Sanlong continued speaking. If you have no place to stay, then why not come to my place? My house is big and there aren't many people living in it. Yep, Unable to resist any longer, Xie Lian said softly, Sanlong, you're such a good person. This was the first time he'd ever complimented someone so bluntly, and he felt a little bashful for it, but he honestly couldn't think of any words that described him better. Sanlong seemed very pleased. It's because it feels like we already have known each other forever, Daozhong, he said, smiling cheerily. Oh yes, there is another thing I forgot to ask. How old are you? I'm 17, Xie Lian replied. Ah, 17. Younger than me, Sanlong said. He did look around 20 or so. Seemingly casually, Sanlong continued, Then that means Daozhong should call me Gege. Shut up. Xie Lian was royalty, a crown prince who commanded the utmost respect. He shouldn't act so familiar with anyone, much less agree to address this man like a brother. Yet Sanlong made him so comfortable and happy, plus he'd never addressed anyone as an elder brother before, so it was a novel idea. I see, so it's Sanlong Gege, Xie Lian said with a smile. Oh my god! Maybe it was just Xie Lian's imagination, but Sanlong's smile turned a little peculiar when he called him Gege. Oh, this is some kinkery right here, right? It was rather hard to describe, but it was as if Sanlong's left eye had been set alight, and its blazing gaze was so ardent that Xie Lian could almost feel his skin burn. He blinked. What's wrong? The horrifying, searing heat subsided in an instant, and San Long returned to normal. Oh, it's nothing. I was just happy, he said with a chuckle. There's no one younger than me at home, so I've never heard anyone call me that before. Then if San Long doesn't mind, I'll continue to address you that way, Xie Lian said. San Long smiled so wide his eyes sparkled, yet his lips still demurred. Oh, of course I certainly don't mind. It depends on whether you do, Dao Zhang. Oh, not at all. Of course not, Xie Lian said. San Long Gege, shall we go to your new house now, then, or later? San Long put down the chopsticks. Let's go now. Come with me. Oh my god! You know, Hua Cheng is like, we have just unlocked a new kink feature into this, him calling me Gege. We're fine. Everything's fine. San Long's residence was extremely spacious, extravagant mansion. When Xie Lian entered, he thought it was almost equal some of the garden palaces within the greater imperial palace of Shanla, which only further cemented the fact that San Long was no ordinary man. The truer statements have yet to be said. As Xie Lian lay alone in bed that night, he tossed and turned. He was mired in a storm of outrageous, hazy dreams. He wanted to move, but someone was pinning him down firmly. The voice that whispered in his ear was sometimes a man's, sometimes a boy. Sometimes it called him Gege, Gege, and sometimes it called him Your Highness as it coaxed him, Don't be afraid, Your Highness. It was intensely gentle, intensely evil, and all throughout he felt intensely cherished by the one he was with. Intensely evil and gentle, describing San Long with Xie Lian, is the most accurate thing possible. Xie Lian woke with a start, his clothes completely soaked with sweat. He clenched his fists and panted. Feeling both furious and powerless, he punched the bed violently and tangled his fingers in his slightly damp hair. When will I ever be able to forget about this? Just wait. When I catch that shameless jerk, I'll definitely... He noticed that there was a set of clothing laid next to his pillow that he'd never seen before. Robes in his favored white color. And they were even in the style he preferred. Greatly relieved, Xie Lian hurried to the back of the room to take a quick bath. Stripped and soaking in the water, he discovered he had a fine silver-thin chain around his neck. A crystal-clear ring that hung to the end of it. He didn't know how long he'd been wearing it, but he hadn't noticed it at all. Do I have a pendant like this? The ring was genuinely so beautiful that he stared at it mesmerized. But that didn't mean he'd drop his guard. A silver glint flashed by. Who's there? Xie Lian shouted. He struck the water and sent forth a splash that scattered like iron pellets, hitting the wall with resounding rat-a-tat bangs. Yet his attack didn't reveal a person, but a scimitar! He held that sturdy blade up to inspect it, incredibly confused. Suddenly, a silver line on the hilt opened like an eyelid, and the eyeball beneath began spinning. This shocked Xie Lian even further. What was this strange thing? The scimitar had a long and slender body, and it seemed almost alive. It enthusiastically tried to throw itself into Xie Lian's arms. Oh no, over and over. Caught off guard, Xie Lian let it succeed in its endeavor, yelping and shuddering at the cold metal pressed against him. Perhaps it was because he didn't sense any killing intent, but Xie Lian's instincts told him that the scimitar posed no danger. He didn't want to react harshly toward it and send it beyond the clouds with a slap or anything like that, but his reluctance left him constantly and arduously trying to push it away. Just then, a red shadow flashed in and snatched up the scimitar. So this is where you were. Xie Lian looked up to see that San Long was standing next to the bathing pool, with the scimitar choked in his hold. Although a smile still hung upon his face, faint veins had surfaced on his forehead. He gave the scimitar a hard smack. Didn't I say you're not allowed to be in here right now? He admonished. San Long, is that scimitar your spiritual weapon? Xie Lian asked. San Long turned towards him, the veins on his forehead disappearing. In an instant, and his calm, composed demeanor regained. It's nothing but a worthless piece of scrap, San Long said. Gege. Your Gege made a fool of himself. Please excuse me. Oh my god. Iming was just like, you're back! Oh my god, you're back home! Ha ha ha! And Hua Cheng's like, no, his memory's not back, you fool. Xie Lian, however, looked at him with bright eyes and immense respect. Catching the hem of San Long's red robe, he exclaimed, No, San Long Gege, you're amazing. I can't believe you forged a spiritual weapon like this, one that possesses its own consciousness. The scimitar's eye had scrunched up after San Long had smacked it. its grievance plain to see, but it was set happily spinning once more by Xie Lian's praise. It tried again to sidle towards him, but San Lang coldly gave it another smack, and it simply would not have it. It collapsed to the floor with a thud and started rolling back and forth, looking for all the world like a small child bawling after being spanked by an adult. Xie Lian could almost hear its loud crying voice, and he felt a little sorry for it. He quickly stood up. Oh, wait, San Lang, let it go. Don't hit it anymore. I'm sure it was just being a little mischievous, as it paid me a friendly visit. There's no need to be so hard on it. It was only after he emerged from the bathwater that he remembered he was naked. His face turned intensely red again, and he sank back down awkwardly. However, San Lang had already turned around with artless ease and left. Xie Lian quickly climbed out of the water and changed into his new robes. He was even more grateful when he felt the superbly fine material of the underclothes. At last, he wouldn't feel so chafed anymore. When he left his room and went into the receiving hall, San Lang was already at the head seat waiting for him. Xie Lian didn't know how San Lang had disciplined his scimitar, but it was behaving as it hung at his waist. When it wasn't moving, it had a surprisingly cold and murderous appearance. It was hard to imagine that it had just been rolling on the ground making a scene. San Lang smiled when he saw Xie Lian. Oh, you're up. Did you sleep well last night? I don't know why I was disturbed by dreams for the first half of the night, but the second half was fine, Xie Lian answered. Maybe you were too tired, San Lang replied. The two made idle chit-chat and sparred a few easy rounds. That was how they spent the whole day. He expected that they'd pass this time this way until Hua Cheng was available to meet him. However, when Xie Lian lay alone in bed that night, he once again had this heated, restless dream. He tossed and turned this way and that, and after he'd had enough, he jolted awake completely drenched with sweat once again. Angry and helpless, he had to get up for some fresh air. He wanted to take a stroll to calm down, but then he suddenly heard voices coming from a house at the far side of the complex. It was San Lang's master residence. The sound insulation of the house was excellent and the voices were quiet, but Xie Lian had keen senses and caught the noise. He held his breath and went over silently. Peering through the crack of the door, he saw San Lang sitting in the head seat inside. He held a brush and seemed to be writing. His expression was cold, completely different than when he was with Xie Lian. Beside him, there was a black-clad man wearing a ghost mask who bent at the waist as he made a report in a low voice. Oh, it's Yin Yu! So Yin Yu's okay, right? Right? That's Yin Yu, correct? Okay. So he's okay now. Time has passed and he's fine, right? Xie Lian didn't know why, but the man in the ghost mask had barely any presence. It is Yin Yu. He could easily go completely unnoticed if one wasn't careful. The man in the ghost mask had already mostly finished his report when Xie Lian began listening, so he only caught some scattered words here and there. That monster has been causing trouble for a long time. He might have gotten into an accident when he went out to handle prayers. This is the location I've pinpointed, and other such things. He was still trying to process what he'd learned when he heard San Lang say, I need to attend to him right now and can't leave. Catch that monster before tomorrow night and bring it to me. Yes, sir. Shall I leave it one last breath? The man in the ghost mask asked quietly. San Lang put down his brush and glanced at what he'd written, which he then crumpled up and tossed away, apparently displeased. Leave it a few. Make it spit out what it swallowed, and then crush its worthless head into dust and make it slow and painful. His tone and expression were both frightening, but Xie Lian didn't find him repulsive or alarming. The man in the ghost mask acknowledged San Lang's order and was about to take his leave, so Xie Lian quickly dodged away and hid. When he made it back to his room, Xie Lian was even more wide awake than before. He paced back and forth, wondering who exactly is San Lang and what is that monster he spoke of. It sounded as though some monster had been causing havoc for a long time and swallowed something important. And San Lang was very angry about it, but he couldn't head out and smash the monster's head in because he had to stay with Xie Lian. Though that made Xie Lian feel awful, San Lang was truly treating him with the utmost courtesy. Suddenly, a light turned on his head. Why did he just have to sit around? There was no meeting Hua Cheng for a while, and he'd been wanting to do something for San Lang, his good Gege. So why not go seize the monster for him? His mind made up, Xie Lian got started immediately. He left behind a letter that said, Don't worry, San Lang Gege. Lian will be back soon. And other such things. Then he leapt out silently and left the magnificent mansion behind. Oh my God, what is happening? The location of the man in the ghost mask that was reported wasn't difficult to find. It was many kilometers south, inside a particular cave within a particular mountain. Xie Lian was confident that no ordinary human could match his speed, so he would definitely reach it faster than San Long's subordinate. Sure enough, 2 hours later, he arrived at the mountain in question and charged right up, smashing and punching wildly, leaving wailing ghosts and spirits in his wake until he finally found the cave he was looking for. Although the monster put on quite the show by having 300 or 400 minions guarding its door, against Xie Lian there might as well have been only 3 or 4. He didn't act recklessly at first because he was worried the opponent was formidable, but after patiently watching the cave nearby, Xie Lian learned from the gossiping minions that the monster had been having a rough couple of days too. Yeah, Shanzu went through a hell of a lot of trouble escaping the hands of that foul cultivator. He was scared half to death. He was injured and went back to his old cave, but he fled as soon as he got there, scared shitless. Then he came here. I see. I was going to ask why he called everyone out here. So it's because he's scared of that cultivator coming after him for revenge? But he shouldn't be, you know? Shanzu took a few big bites out of the guy, so he must have completely lost it, even if he did manage to wake up. How could he not be scared? Shanzu is a great and renowned Yao, centuries old, but apparently that cultivator popped up out of nowhere and smacked him silly with only a couple strikes. If the cultivator hadn't been injured somehow and given him an opening, Shanzu probably would have been lost to us today. Oh, holy, where'd that random cultivator come from? How is he so strong? At this point, Xie Lian felt it was time. He emerged and strolled up to them fully at ease and greeted them with an amiable hello. The minions jumped. Well, who are you? Where'd this pretty little boy come from? Xie Lian gave them a smile. He didn't bother explaining before he went straight for the kill, moving towards the cave as he did. Even without spiritual power, he caught many of them in simple, casual grabs, and they were tossed hundreds of meters away with equally casual throws. The minions were reduced to screaming, terrified wrecks. Oh, what's with that pretty boy? He looks so gentle. How is he such a brute? But Xie Lian doesn't have any spiritual power, so how is he going to destroy the monster? Like he was pulling weeds along the road, Xie Lian stepped into the cave without a single obstruction. He had been prepared for a huge battle with a renowned Yao, yet when he went inside the cave, all he saw was a monster in human form rolling around on the ground, groaning and crying in pain while clutching his stomach. At first, Xie Lian thought it was only faking it, but a closer look proved otherwise. Its stomach was massively distended, as if it had swallowed something horrific. Xie Lian crouched next to it. What's wrong? The monster was probably too far gone from the pain. As soon as it saw Xie Lian, it shouted, "You! Perfect timing! I don't want to eat it anymore! I don't dare to! I'll never do it again! I'll return what I swallowed to you! I can't digest it! It can't be digested!" "I think you've got the wrong person," Xie Lian said. You didn't swallow anything of mine, so why would you be returning?" But the monster only writhed in agony, unable to answer. Puzzled, Xie Lian absent-mindedly wrote out a talisman, thinking it'd be the best to capture and seal the monster first. But when he slapped the talisman on the creature, to his amazement, it transformed into a ridiculous-looking round Budawong with a belly much bigger than any normal doll's. What? What is happening? What? Oh my god. What is going on? Although Xie Lian was surprised, he also found it hilarious. He looked at the talisman that he'd written, confused as to how the spell had turned out this way. Had he made a mistake? But it wasn't a problem. The battle had been a cakewalk. Xie Lian left the deep mountains with the early morning sunlight overhead. He tucked the Budawong doll in his sleeve and hurried back towards the city. He had finally managed to do something for San Long. In a cheerful mood, Xie Lian was already thinking about how he would show off the monster he'd captured to San Long. He told himself to tamp down on his pleased expression if he wanted San Long to be surprised. After an entire night of toil, his feet were tired, so Xie Lian found a random stall to sit in and got himself a bowl of free tea water. As he drank, he heard someone call behind him, "Xie Lian!" Xie Lian immediately put down the tea bowl. Who was so audacious as to call out his name directly in public? There were very few who could act so disrespectfully, even among the members of the royal family. Who was it to not address him with the full awe, reverence, and respect due to him as His Royal Highness the Crown Prince? When he looked back, he was surprised the speaker was a commoner. He was walking with long strides and carrying a large wooden chest. "Oh, wait, hold up," he shouted. "You forgot Xie Lian. Take him with you, too." So the man wasn't calling to him, but someone with the same name. But now Xie Lian was even more puzzled. Even though he'd never care about the royal naming taboos or any of that, he was still shocked that someone dared to have the same name as him. But soon he learned that the Xie Lian the man spoke of wasn't a person. There was a burly man sitting near Xie Lian, and the man with the chest went down to sit beside him. "I brought Xie Lian over," he said, patting his chest. Remember to bring it to the other half you worship in your house today. Don't dismiss it as a superstition. It'll spell great misfortune if they aren't placed together." The two statues, the one of Xie Lian and the one of Hua Cheng. Of course, I know. Xie Lian couldn't hold back anymore. "Excuse me." The two men looked at him and he continued, "Pardon my forwardness, but may I ask what's in the chest?" "Didn't I say already? It's Xie Lian," said the man. Xie Lian was confused, but isn't Xie Lian His Highness the Crown Prince? The two of them seemed to find him funny. Oh, no one said he's not the Crown Prince. Of course he is. See? He opened the chest, and Xie Lian's eyes bulged. There was a small shrine within. A dusty divine statue was venerated inside it. A cultivator dressed in white, wearing a bamboo hat on his back. He didn't recognize this idol, and Xie Lian couldn't understand it at all. "Are you saying this divine statue is the Crown Prince of Shanla, Xie Lian? Well, who else could it be?" The crowd began to surround them. Half had been attracted by what a novelty he was. "What a strange young man! You look like you're a cultivator, too. How do you not know something so simple?" The other half of the crowd had come to check out the divine statue. Oh no, Xie Lian's memory. "Oh, that's a pretty decent scrap immortal. Looks sufficiently depressing." "Yeah, look how woeful and dejected it is. That's obviously the face of bad luck." "Oh, good, very good, excellent. The worse it looks now, the better it'll look when the other one helps it break free. You'll see the results in 8 days tops." 3 days or 5 days, 8 days, 800 years. Oh my God, Xie Lian was completely lost. "Scrap immortal? What do you mean he's a scrap immortal?" "Dao Zhang, you really are strange," the crowd replied. "Xie Lian was originally a scrap collector, you know." Xie Lian wasn't someone who got angrily easily, but right now he was starting to feel a little vexed. No one wanted to hear others say that they were a lowly collector of junk. He shot to his feet and said darkly, "Do you have something against the royal family of Shanla? Even if you do, it doesn't seem very proper to insult the crown prince this way, does it?" The crowd exchanged looks of dismay and then laughed. "What are you saying? Proper by which country's standards? Shanla fell over 800 years ago." And now, poor Xie Lian, whose mind has been completely befuddled with amnesia, is going to feel absolutely ridiculous. 2 hours later, Xie Lian's mind was still spinning as he walked down the street. It was too much. Everything he'd just learned was too frightening for him. How could the kingdom of Shanla have been destroyed? Father and mother are perfectly well. Oh no! And how can they say I was the one who destroyed it? I lost a war. I destroyed my own kingdom. I was banished twice. I became a scrap collector. He went through it again and again and told himself over and over again, "Impossible, impossible, absolutely impossible." He wanted to convince himself none of it was true, that some evil mastermind must be orchestrating all of this. But all the vague abnormalities, the odd dialects, the odd dress, the odd architecture, even the odd function in Muqing, they were all telling him that this wasn't a bad dream or some sort of illusion. There was no nefarious creature that could cast such a grand and realistic spell. 800 years had really passed. How had 800 years passed? How had he ended up like this after 800 years? The kingdom of Shanla had fallen. His parents were dead. Muqing and Fengshen had ascended, and he'd become a scrap collector. How did it turn out this way? It couldn't have. It shouldn't have. Xie Lian walked faster and faster until he broke into a run, as if there were an infinite darkness on his tail about to devour him whole. Suddenly, a red shadow appeared. A tall and slender figure stopped in front of him. "Daozhang, where are you going? I've been looking everywhere for you." It was San Long, forever smiling. He approached and tried to take his hand, but now the sight of him made Xie Lian's hair stand on end. "Don't come near me," he shouted. San Long faltered but retained his unbothered air. What's wrong? Clenching his hands into hard fists, Xie Lian asked coldly, "Who exactly are you? What do you want?" "I thought we had a nice conversation yesterday and decided that those small details were no longer worth discussing." "You lied to me," Xie Lian said. After a brief silence, San Long asked, "Have you already found out?" "Yes, that the present time is 800 years later." It shouldn't have taken him this long to notice all the things that were wrong, but this man had been keeping him in the dark on purpose, which made him lose his bearings. Otherwise, how would it take an entire day to discover the truth? San Long took a step forward. "Your Highness." Xie Lian backed away many steps. "Don't get near me," he barked. "Take one more step and I'll hit you." His voice and body were both shaking in terror. He wasn't scared of some hellish ghost, nor was he afraid of the man who appeared both evil and divine. He was terrified of this entirely foreign world. In this world he possessed neither pride, nor glory, nor loyal subordinates, nor parents who loved him, nor his kingdom, nor devotees who adored him. He had nothing, nothing, nothing. San Long still took another step towards him. Don't be afraid, Your Highness. Xie Lian's face changed when he heard him. He suddenly recalled the man in his fragmented dreams who had whispered next to his ear, "Don't be afraid." How had he not realized it? That tone and their voices were exactly the same. Xie Lian was convulsing with anger. It was you. It was really you. This man had deceived him and made him go around in circles, had made him weep with gratitude, filled him with good feelings, and had called him Gege. The mere thought of it sent an unstoppable rage surging through Xie Lian, and he struck out, "You liar!" His strike hit San Long squarely in the chest. But as Xie Lian tried to strike again, he found that he couldn't move a muscle. His own body had stopped him. Xie Lian didn't understand what was happening, and San Long caught his hand amidst his confusion. Startled, Xie Lian gritted out, "Do not touch me, you liar! You lied to me. I will never trust you again. You, Your Highness, trust me," San Long said gravely. Xie Lian was furious. "I won't! But in the same way that he'd been unable to attack, the words, "I don't trust you," refused to pass his lips. The concern and pain in this man's eyes were real and true without a doubt. No one who witnessed such an expression would question its sincerity. As if to isolate Xie Lian from the foreign world he feared, San Long finally pulled him into his arms. He pressed his lips to his head to brush kisses through his hair, and he whispered softly and gently, "Don't be afraid, Your Highness. It's all in the past. Your Highness, you've already made it through." It was a long time before Xie Lian ceased his resistance and went slack in his embrace. Tossing aside his mortification, when Xie Lian really thought about it, the man's voice that called to him in the fragmented dream was always extremely gentle, without a shred of coercion. As for himself, although there had certainly been pleas and weeping, he could tell that he hadn't been reluctant in the least. The only reason he hadn't noticed until now was he simply hadn't wanted to face it. Xie Lian finally understood why he couldn't help but want to trust this man at first sight. The relationship between San Long and the him of 800 years later was probably not so simple. He fully gave up on fighting his body and went along with what his heart wanted. With his face buried in San Long's chest, his voice was muffled when he began to speak. "We're..." San Long replied. Xie Lian was silent for a long time before he mumbled, Why have I suddenly forgotten everything that happened over the last 800 years? "It was my fault," San Long replied. 2 evenings ago, you suddenly received a prayer in the middle of the night. You left in such a hurry that I hadn't had the chance to restore your spiritual power, nor warn you that your memories would be devoured if that monster bit you. Oh! That's not your fault at all. I was the one who screwed up, Xie Lian said. Your Highness will never be a screw-up, San Long said. Xie Lian gave an arduous smile before saying dejectedly, Then San Long, how did I let the kingdom of Shanla be destroyed? He so clearly loved his people. He even once had the lofty ambition of making Shanla last for another 1,000 years. San Long hugged him tighter and said firmly, It isn't your fault. How did I fail? How did I become this way? Xie Lian mumbled. Who didn't want to undertake a grand enterprise that would shake the world and leave their mark on history? Maybe not 1 in a million could accomplish such a feat, but Xie Lian had always firmly believed that he'd be that one. Perhaps that was why San Long hadn't allowed him to realize that he was 800 years in the future. You didn't fail, San Long repeated. Xie Lian shook his head, but I don't have any devotees anymore. You do. Just the thought of it made Xie Lian sad. I'm the scrap immortal, a collector of trash. I have no devotees, and no one takes me for a god. Who would respect a god who collects scraps? It was completely different from the vision he'd once had. Didn't I tell you already? You have 1 devotee, San Long insisted. When Xie Lian looked up, San Long smiled at him. Your Highness, I told you that you would be able to meet Hua Cheng soon, and now you've met him. Xie Lian gazed at his face, scrutinizing him, and then asked with a trace of amusement in his voice, San Long, when did you first meet me? A long, long time ago before your ascension, Hua Cheng answered. Xie Lian blinked slowly. Your Highness, perhaps the you of right now considers the you of 800 years ago a failure. Maybe you're disappointed and I can't accept that, Hua Cheng said. But please believe me when I say that's not true. His bright left eye gazed at Xie Lian, and the light there was just as soft as his voice. You saved me. I've always watched you. There are countless people who have seen more success than you, but none of them saved me the way that you did. None of them could possibly accomplish all that you have. You have no idea how much courage you've given me, or how you've allowed me to become who I am today. In my heart, you are the only God. And you will forever be my most devoted believer, Xie Lian said. It was a long while before Xie Lian took the monster's Budawang doll out of its sleeve. It seemed like he made up his mind about something. Was this the monster that swallowed my memories? Hua Cheng took it from his hand. So it was your Highness who busted into its new lair. Xie Lian nodded. We'll have to start here if we want my memories restored, won't we? Sitting in Hua Cheng's palm, the Budawang doll opened its mouth wide. A scatter of sparkles flew from the opening like fireflies, dancing as they fluttered around Xie Lian. Your Highness, if you touch them, you can retrieve your memory of the past 800 years. Xie Lian reached towards the sparkling light, yet right before his hands could touch them, he paused. Restoring 800 years of memories would be like traveling through them all, like reliving everything. The agony of his heart being pierced 100 times, the humiliation of utter defeat, the fury of powerlessness. Although he knew the journey would only span a fleeting instant, his fingertips still trembled. Hua Cheng stood behind him. It made Xie Lian feel like he was leaning against a solid, supportive wall. Don't be scared, Your Highness, Hua Cheng said from above him. Xie Lian tilted his head and Hua Cheng's arm wrapped around his waist. No matter how long it takes, I will always wait for you. We will meet again. Believe me. Yeah, they would meet again. Xie Lian once again reached towards those sparkles. Dots of twilight light melted in the tips of his fingers. Brightness slowly enveloped his vision, as if something hot was approaching. Before the light reached him, however, Xie Lian said to Hua Cheng, I'm so happy I met you. The sparkles entered his body and vanished, and Xie Lian fell forward slowly, and Hua Cheng caught him. It was a while before Xie Lian regained consciousness. As he opened his eyes, Hua Cheng asked quietly, Gege. A warm smile gradually bloomed on Xie Lian's face, and he reached out to cup Hua Cheng's cheek. We meet again. Hua Cheng smiled too. I did say that you should believe me. Does this count as waiting for each other another 800 years? Didn't I say that I will always wait for you no matter how long it takes? But Hua Cheng pulled Xie Lian to his feet. As the two stood face to face, Hua Cheng squeezed his hands and smiled. Right now, I never want to be separated again, not for another minute. The past couldn't be changed. 800 years ago, the 17-year-old Xie Lian, darling of the heavens, didn't know what the future had in store for him. Fate had given him 2 doors, and he opened them both. The awe-inspiring first impression upon the grand avenue of divine might, and the meeting of the evil and the divine at the Yinian Bridge. After that, he would be alone and powerless in the roaring waves of desperate times and struggle through long, torturous centuries. Pain, anger, disappointment, hatred, despair, madness. His heart would become dead as ashes. And then it would be rekindled. But that, of course, was all in the past. Welcome back, Gege. See, I told you we would meet again. I didn't lie to you. Xie Lian shot Hua Cheng a look. Oh, really? Of course, Hua Cheng assured with a smile. When have I ever lied to your Highness? After all, as your Gege. Xie Lian reached into Hua Cheng's robes and pulled out a sheet of paper. Lian has no way of repaying San Long Gege for his care, he read aloud. Thus, I am willing to do everything within my meager power to alleviate my Gege's worries. I will take a temporary leave. Do not worry, San Long Gege. Lian will return soon. Hua Cheng quirked an eyebrow, not saying a word, as he stood with his hands folded behind his back. Once Xie Lian finished reading, he quirked an eyebrow, too, in imitation of him. San Long Gege, good Gege. Oh, you're good, aren't you? Hua Cheng burst out laughing. Isn't Gege already aware of just how good I am? Oh, Xie Lian flushed a little. I don't know what you're talking about, he replied vaguely. Anyway, you've crossed the line over the last couple of days. Reflect on your behavior. Gege, you can't be like this, Hua Cheng said in a stern tone. I've been nothing but courteous for the past 48 hours. It's been very hard holding myself back. How were you courteous? Xie Lian countered. You were clearly having a great time messing with him. When he remembered how he'd spent the last 2 days, regressed into an innocent, naive, foolish, spoiled, pampered little 17-year-old idiot who got played by Hua Cheng over and over, Xie Lian could barely face himself. He groaned, putting a hand over his forehead. In a serious tone, Hua Cheng added, It's true. Even if he got yelled at by Gege and called a despicable, shameless, perverted jerk, San Long has no complaints and no regrets. Gege, if you're unhappy, you can yell at him again. San Long doesn't mind. Xie Lian couldn't bear to listen anymore. He began to creep away, his hand still over his forehead, and by the time Hua Cheng turned back to him, he was gone. Oh, Gege, don't run away. All right, I screwed up, Gege. Stop with this, Gege, already. Jeez. Ah! Oh, my God. Oh. That was so good. Oh, my God. The twist. The twist. So yeah. Okay, let's go back to that real quick. Oh my God. So the twist is that there was this, so this all makes sense now. Oh my God. So it all makes sense. There was this monster, what'd they call it? The monster that he goes to the cave, Shanzu. So this Shanzu was a monster that eats memories. And Xie Lian, so to put this into the timeline, basically 2 days ago, basically 2 days prior, Xie Lian and San Long, aka Hua Cheng, had an intense night of lovemaking, which is where all the hickeys and everything came from. They had an intense night of lovemaking, and then Xie Lian received a prayer asking him to go take care of this Shanzu, which in his spiritually depleted state from a thing, he went to battle Shanzu. Shanzu bit him, and by biting him, it took his memories. And then Xie Lian woke up and had reverted back to his 17-year-old self. Mu Qing and Feng Xin realized what had happened. They went and told Hua Cheng, and Hua Cheng was trying to ease him back and kind of keep him placated until he had Yin Yu catch Shanzu to give the memories back, and then he was going to take care of it. He said between 3 to 5 days, so I'm assuming that if for some reason Shanzu didn't give the memories back, that eventually the memories would slowly return, maybe, with time, but it was just going to take longer. So instead, he managed to get the memories back, or he was just going to take them from the corpse when Yin Yu brought it to him. The fact that Hua Cheng was like, crush the life out of him. It was just like, oh my God, like, you don't mess with Hua Cheng. Well, and Yin Yu's back. So Yin Yu's back. He's a ghost. We don't know if he's a ghost or if he's a heavenly official. No clue. But he's back, and he's working for Hua Cheng because, of course, he is. Because what else is Yin Yu going to do? I hope that if we see Yin Yu in more extras, because we still have, like, at least 2 more extras to read, I hope that Chan Yijin comes back, and we get to see Chan Yijin with Yin Yu again. That'd be nice. But we have 2 more extras to read, so yes. At least we have 2 more sets. So, yes, good. But yeah, oh my God. So that all makes sense now. So it was like this combination. On the one hand, yes, Xie Lian's body was violated, which is very sad and not good. But on the other hand, all of the other stuff and his virginity being taken was consensual and with Hua Cheng. So I also kind of love like the world building that we have going on now that Hua Cheng and Xie Lian have been established in this area where so he's rebuilt, you know, they have the temple and everything and the mansion, all this has been remade, right? I'm assuming he's talking about the Chandong Temple is the mansion that he went to because we know Paradise Manor was destroyed. So it seems like the Chandong Temple was where his palace is. But I like the idea that the town and the Ghost City residents who were playing along and trying to help not only have all adopted the red strings around their fingers to like be a sign of their finding their soulmates and all this because of Xie Lian and Hua Cheng, but the idea that they have little dioramas and mini shrines that they place around where you just put Hua Cheng and Xie Lian there for extra good luck. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh, the best part about this chapter, though, were the last few pages where Xie Lian gets his memories back and he's looking at the letter that he wrote San Long and he's like, San Long Gege? Really? And Hua Cheng's like, I don't know. He's like that. Hua Cheng is that meme of that girl with the pigtails. It's like, I don't know how this happened. I absolutely love domesticated Hualien, where Xie Lian and Hua Cheng are like, did you really? And he's like, oh, Gege, come on, Gege, come on. Oh my God, my heart. I just, Also, it's so interesting because, you know, Modao Zushi is just like slow burn, porn without plot. Like, just the extras are like, here you go. And I like that in this, it is a slow burn too, but the romance is handled a lot differently. And like, they let you know, they let you fill in the gaps with your imagination. They're like, we'll give you just enough to know what these two have done, but we're not going to explicitly tell you. We're going to let you fill in the gaps yourself. And it's like, that's often more kinky than, you know, it being spelled out for you. So, oh, this was really good. I'm glad I read this all in one go as one journey, because otherwise I think it would have drove me. Originally, I was only going to read parts 1 and part 2 for this week. Glad that didn't happen, because I think it would have drove myself crazy and the theories would have been a bit bonkers. You know, I would have been like, Romania, just go ahead and read, please. So yeah, I'm glad I got this. Yay. This is great. This extra, the way that it sort of encapsulated all of Xie Lian's like journey in this one moment and showing like 17-year-old Xie Lian and how he would react to everything. The part that I thought was maybe the most beautiful, though, the best part was the very end with Hua Cheng and Xie Lian being like, really? But the part that I loved the most is that the memories were like the little fireflies were dancing, and Xie Lian has the choice of, do I take the memories? For a second, I thought he wasn't going to do it. For a second, I thought, because he was debating, he was like, if I take back all these memories, I know what's going to happen. I've heard the story from the townspeople about all the bad things that have happened to me over the course of 800 years. I'm gonna have to suffer again. And for a second, you're like, oh, are we gonna like sit there and let Xie Lian suffer like this? But I don't like when people's memories are erased from tropes. Like, that's a narrative trope that I hate, because memories are so precious. And on the one hand, yes, you don't want Xie Lian to re-experience those horrible things that happened to him. But on the other hand, in between all of those experiences are these beautiful little moments with Hua Cheng, with Mu Qing and Feng Xin and the others. And you can't have all those memories without the pain as well. So it's like, you have to have those moments. So I'm really glad that they didn't make it to where, on the one hand, at first I was like, oh, well, Xie Lian doesn't have to remember all those bad things again. But then I'm like, no, I want him to. And I love the thematic thing of Hua Cheng with like hugging him from behind, being like, whatever happens, I'll be here when you come back. So good. It's so good. Love it. I freaking love it. It's so wonderful, right? So yes, I am 1,000 times for that. So, yeah. That's great. Living for it. So, yeah. So that's fun. I've nearly spent 2 hours on this section. So yay. But next week, we're going to be at the penultimate set of volume 8, and that is going to be chapters, it will be chapter 250 and 251, pages 243 to 282, because it's a nice little chunk. So yeah, we're going to look at chapters 250 and 251 next week, which will be very exciting. I'm ready for it, but I'm curious to know all of your thoughts down below. What you guys thought of this extra story. I thought it was great. I was like, the mystery of it, and you don't figure out it's the monster, and everything doesn't click into place at the end. Top notch. So I'm excited to hear your thoughts down below. But yeah, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon with more heaven officials blessing. Bye.